Ethiopia, Lasting Effects. History of Africa, HIWD 320, August 25th, 2016. Ethiopia has been a land influenced by foreign contact. From ancient times until the modern era, they continue to import elements from other cultures. This is seen through architecture and infrastructure still present in Ethiopia today. The lasting effects can be seen in both the culture, but most especially in some of the infrastructure. Bridges were a great aid to the movement of people in Ethiopia. This particular bridge was built around the year 1626 near Tis Isat, Ethiopia. This bridge is said to have been built to facilitate the battles with the Muslims within the country. We can only speculate that Ethiopian slaves may have journeyed across this bridge at one time, out from the interior and toward the coast. The architecture, which remains from the Middle Ages period, when Portugal sought military, economic, and religious partnership with Ethiopia, is not very well researched. This bridge was brought to the attention of the rest of the world when in 2000 it was seen to still be broken in half from World War II. As you can see in this picture, it has been repaired. There has also been an additional suspension bridge added along the river. Just as in many African countries, the most lasting effect was the slave trade, which grew to phenomenal numbers once Ethiopia had contact with Portugal. The Ethiopian slaves ended up most often in India and even China. The Indian Ocean slave trade, however, never grew to be as large as the Atlantic slave trade. Ethiopia was very near escaping the struggle of colonialism by the end of the 18th century. They had been spared in the scramble for Africa and were an isolated, independent country in the corner of Africa. When Ethiopia joined the League of Nations in September 1923, a false sense of security settled over the African country. Its leader traveled to the European nations and hoped to see many influences there which he could use in his home country. But this was not to be. When the Italians began their quest for a new Roman Empire, Ethiopia was in their sights. Pleas from the people to the League of Nations for aid was answered, but only slowly, with sanctions against Italy. However, the sanctions of the League of Nations had very little effect because the United States was the largest supplier in the world of pig iron, steel, and oil, which they had hoped to limit in Italy. The United States did not take part in the sanctions against the country, and these items were necessary for modern warfare. Although the Italians did much to update the infrastructure of Ethiopia while they occupied the country, with roads, bridges, and even electricity, the number of dead which the Ethiopians suffered is no comparison. Help only came truly for the Ethiopians when World War II was underway, and England felt its African possessions were in a compromised situation. With the aid of the British, the Ethiopian resistance was able to throw off its Italian captors, but this event still left an indelible mark upon the Ethiopian people. The obelisk of the Ascom was taken by the Italians when they occupied Ethiopia in the 1930s. This seal was to commemorate the return of that obelisk to its proper home in Ethiopia, which happened just recently in 2008.